Russ Ebert. Welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast.
Hello.
So, Russ and I know each other. Once again, I hate to say these types of things because it makes me realize how old I am. Is since Russ was a teenager in high school, when I went out one of the first times to assist in teaching a seminar in Sosuishi-Ryu Jujutsu with my first instructor, Dennis Fink, where he didn't teach too much Sosuishi-Ryu. I wound up teaching more of that, and he just taught some judo and self-defense stuff. So I've known Russ since he was a teenager, and a lot has transpired throughout the years in both our lives. Russ has been living in Japan for a very long time, married with children there. He studied several different arts there, and I thought it would be a good idea to have him on to talk about what it's like being a foreigner living in Japan and training in various martial arts in Japan. So, Russ, why don't you maybe give us a little bit about your background, the different arts you've studied or currently train in, all right? And we'll take it from there.
Okay, so as you know, I started with Sosuishi-Ryu in Oregon.
Right.
And that was at the Okawa Dojo with
Right.
Dave Sumner. That was ages ago.
Right.
My dojo was in Oregon City. It was his student, Fred Macy. And I was starting with him in Oregon City. And then we would go to the Okawa Dojo for events like you had.
Right.
Yeah, which was ages ago. That's unbelievably long. Dogs are freaking out. So I started there. And then I moved to Shinto Muso-Ryu, and that was in 90-something. So from 1984, until 1990-something, I was doing Sosuishi-Ryu only. And then I went to Shinto Muso-Ryu, which is the school of the stick, right?
Right, the Jodo, right.
Right. So after I did that, I was pretty much in between jobs at the time. In 1999, 2000, and I started working for a company called J Lines in Yokkaichi, which is it's another city just close to me in BA Prefecture.
Okay.
And I was going back and forth to Japan from 1990 to 2000, right? So finally, I just decided I'm going to move. So I'm doing Sosuishi-Ryu and Shinto Muso-Ryu, and I moved to Japan. And I'm working here for a jet ski company. This company specializes in jet ski products. And very boring story. But anyway, I've been here since 2000, so I've been here for 25 years.
Okay.
So the first year I was here, from 2000 to 2001, I was going back and forth between the two countries, the United States and Japan, because I was trying to get my visa sorted out for working.
Right.
So I'd go to Japan for 4 months, and I'd overstay my visa and then move back to the United States, to the point where I was going to the airport, and they just recognized me. They just passed me through. Right, seriously, in Nagoya, they just said, go.
Right.
Yeah, so I get my visa. I'm living here. So I decided to start looking for martial arts. So I know that Sosuishi-Ryu is in Tokyo or Fukuoka. So I start doing Shinto Muso-Ryu here with a guy named Ishida. And as you know, I've been training with Sosuishi-Ryu. I've been to Fukuoka before. I've been to Tokyo. I was associated with the Tokyo guys for a long time. Anyway, they were too far away for me to train with regularly, so I started with Shinto Muso-Ryu here in Kuana, or Nagoya. So I'm going back and forth to Nagoya to train. And then after that, I was doing his other martial arts, and he happened to be associated with something called Ko-Ryu, which is it's a modern school. It's like a guy named Ueno Takashi. He was one of Hatsumi, the ninja guy. His first, before he moved on to Takamatsu Chosui, which is Takamatsu Sensei, the ninja dude.
Right.
He was training with him in this karate school. So I was doing this with him. And they taught Fuzoku-Ryuha or additional Ryuha that are associated with the school. So, like, for example, they had Asayama Ichiryu, Kukishin-Ryu, Hoten-Ryu. He did a whole bunch of different schools. Okay. So his primary school to me was Shinto Muso-Ryu, but he did a whole bunch of other schools. And this kind of set the stage for me. I didn't get along with him in the end because he had some health issues and he became very weird. But all things in the past, right? I left him, but it set the stage for me to start studying other schools. Okay. And I had him for maybe 13 years, 14 years. So my 14th year here, I decided to start up another school, which is called Shinkage-Ryu. And Shinkage-Ryu is a sword school. It's associated with a spear school called Owari-Ryu. Okay. and I'm studying that at the Shunbukan in Nagoya.
So let me just stop you because I just want to clarify. So when you say Shinkage-Ryu, are you talking about Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu, or is this an
Yes.
offshoot, or it's the one and the same?
It's one and the same. Yagyu
Okay.
Shinkage.
So I don't know if you know, I studied Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu for 2 years.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so I'm just go ahead.
DI, or was it because people say Shinkage-Ryu and they mean Yagyu Shingan?
No. I did the Kenjutsu, and I did also some of the Ei Jitsu. And yeah, so wait, but the funny thing is the Yagyus, and you can see these videos are on my channel of the Yagyu sensei and the senior teachers doing a demonstration at the Japan Society in Manhattan, New York. So I was invited to go there because I was training in Muso Shinrin-Ryu, and I was training in Shinto Muso-Ryu, Jodo. And that group said, hey, the Yagyus are coming in. We got tickets. We're all going to go. I was like, great. So we went, and they introduced me to these twin Japanese brothers, Kazuo and Masumi, I think, Kato. And I get introduced as a jujitsu sensei. And they said, oh, what do you do? And I said, I do Sosuishi-Ryu, right? And they were like, oh, okay, right. And they said, oh, we have a school in Garden City, which is right next to where I live at the time. And I go, oh, what are you teaching? And they go, Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu. And I'm like, what? And they go, yeah, you should come by. So I'm like, all right. So I show up like the next Saturday. They give me the times of classes. I show up. I'm in jeans and a shirt. I'm thinking I'm just going to sit there and watch, right? I come in. The students are all lined up, all Japanese. There's not one foreigner in the dojo. This is in Garden City, New York. All Japanese. They're all lined up. They have me lined up to the side, like as an honored guest. And they bow the class in. Okay. So comes over, hands me a Fukura Shinai. He says, come on, we're going to start showing you some stuff. So I look at the guy and I go, I kind of thought I was just going to sit and watch. He goes, you're here. Come on, try it out. And so, of course, me being the martial arts lunatic that I am, I got hooked. I lasted there for 2 years. They have actually went back to Japan. I have not been able to locate them. I've tried. I've even had one of my friends, because they also studied Kendo, which they got me into Kendo too. But their Kendo was not like the Kendo that you see in competition. They would throw a kick. They would foot sweep you and knock you down. So their Kendo was rougher, which I liked because it gave me an opportunity to also use some of the jiu-jitsu in there, right?
That's police Kendo, right?
Yeah.
Police Kendo.
Yeah. So I trained there for 2 years. And then the funny thing is they started training with me in jiu-jitsu. So they were coming to my dojo, training with me in Sosuishi-Ryu, and I was going there training with them in Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu and Kendo. So obviously I haven't trained it in years, but I loved it when I did it. I mean, I found it fascinating. I still have my Fukura Shinais here. And what I do sometimes when I do the Kenjutsu, the Katori Shinto-Ryu Kenjutsu, I have people use the Fukura Shinais. So we can go with a little bit of hitting, and you can really try to cut the guy, and just to that aspect of training. So so I didn't think you knew that, but yeah, I studied Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu for 2 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can't find these two guys, huh?
I can't find them. My friend's Rokudan in the Kendo in Japan, Imai Norio. He lives in Nagano. My best friend in Japan, I've known him for a long, long time, know his whole family. They've stayed with me in my house in New York when I lived there. He considers himself my only student in Japan, right?
Oh, really?
He's 71. So so anyway, but he tried finding them, he couldn't find them. So I don't know where they are, but Kazuo Kato is the one name, and I think Minomi Kato is the other name, and they're twin brothers. So
that's insane. I did not know this.
Yeah. And if you want to see, I mean, it's Yagyu Nobuhara Sensei. And
I know,
he gives a great lecture. No, is the one that passed away.
But his son-in-law was
right. So anyway, so he gives a great lecture on the video on my channel, and then they demonstrate many of the two-man forms sets, and they also demonstrate the EI. So you can see those videos are right on my channel. Really, really cool. Really cool.
That is insane.
Right. So
So this is Yagyu country where I am.
okay.
And Aichi is where Aichi's famous for being the home of samurai and of Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu, which
Right.
no one needs to know but nerds like me.
Right.
But the Yagyu family lives here. I think Yagyu Sensei is a school teacher. He lives near Shiratori Sho. I see their students all the time. I was just
Okay.
at the Aikon,
Okay.
and I saw his students downstairs. I waved at them when I walked
Right.
by. And they give me an eye like, that's that weird foreign guy.
Right. So are you still doing Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu?
I have to take a break. I work. I work too much,
Right.
but it's on my day that I'm working. I've been on a break for about a year and a half. My
Okay.
teacher, Kato Sensei, he died a couple years back, and things have been kind of crazy there. So it's been kind of rough for them. And the dojo changed. Yeah, it's a long story, but
Right.
there's
The usual things that happen when the head of the dojo passes away.
I think you would have heard of Wills at one time, but they
Right.
didn't use them here. So, so anyway, it's the Shimpukan. They do a Wari-Kan-Ryu, the spear school with the
Okay.
sliding.
Yeah.
It's related to Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu, but Yagyu Kai is a separate thing. And then this is one of
Okay.
the students, one of the head students' place, which is still legitimate. The Kyokai and the Shinkokai both recognize a Wari-Kan-Ryu, but it's Shinkage-Ryu EI. Shinkage-Ryu Kenjutsu. No EI.
Right. And what's interesting when I've seen some of the spear, because I've seen some of the Owari-Ryu, and obviously I'm not up to the spear in Kotori yet. But when I see it, very similar to Chinese.
Yeah.
The way it's manipulated, because I do Chen style Tai-Chi and we do pole shaking, which is basically the staff or the spear, however you want to look at it. And it's that same kind of that action where you're getting that thrusting action in and withdrawing and stepping in and doing it. It's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
So the
That's
spear
exactly
stuff is very interesting, you know?
It's a giant spear too. It's a huge spear. People who do it leave it at the dojo because it's too
What's
big.
the length?
Oh God. It's like let's see. I think it's like, I don't know how it is. It's like almost 3 meters, which I don't know how many inches. I can't do Western.
Yeah, 3
measurements.
meters, about 9 feet.
Yeah, it's around 9 foot, 8 foot long. It's way taller than I am.
It's funny because it's the same thing with the Chen staff. The Chen staff is very long too from Chen Tai-Chi.
Actually, 3 meters is let's see, I'm a meter, so it's almost it's almost 2.5 meters. That would
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's 12 foot.
Oh,
12,
so it's
13.
long. Okay.
Yeah, really long.
Now, is it a hardwood staff or is the wood more flexible?
It's a hard oak. It's white oak.
Okay.
But it's because it's so long, it's bouncy and it
right.
So what they do is they have a thing called a kuda.
Okay.
Kuda, and it's a piece of metal and it fits over it and it slides like that.
Okay.
So when you thrust it, it goes wah, 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 like that.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Okay. And how long were you doing that?
I was doing that for maybe 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had to quit, but I didn't quit. I just had to take a break. So I've been trying to go back, but time is really rough. So that's it. Then after I started Shinkage-Ryu, I started something called Ko-Ryu.
Okay.
This is all right 10 years ago. This was like 2012 actually. Sorry. Ko-Ryu is a school of swimming. That's
okay. I've seen some of your videos doing some of that stuff.
So. Yeah, it looks kind of, everything is just theoretical. So it looks like I'm just doing some kind of weird swimming thing, but there's meaning behind it that you don't see. So, it looks like I'm doing I guess it's like swimming ballet or something.
Right.
But it's not. It has a deeper meaning. And there's this is a school that's almost 200 and something years old.
Okay.
It was founded here where I am in VA.
Okay.
And then I started that. And then I started something called a Muso-Ryu, which you know.
Yes.
It's the school. And then after that, I started Sishu-Ryu,
okay,
which is Kyudo.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it's a school of Kyudo that's famous here in Aichi.
Okay.
And then soon after that, I started training with Shinto Dojo, which is in Mie Prefecture.
Okay.
And I did this because it's a longer way away from me because I'm closer to Aichi here, but it's somewhere called Kamayama, and it has a historic dojo.
Okay.
dojo is maybe 200 years old. It's gorgeous. It's
Okay.
all hard. It's traditional. It was built during the end of the Edo era and the beginning of the Meiji era, just as kendo started to be prolific.
Okay. Right.
And it's a kendo dojo, but you'll find things like kusarigama in there,
Okay.
and it's insane. It's really cool and old, and it gives you a look into the past before kendo became a sport, and when it was something that was supporting these small martial arts schools that were attached to kendo, like
Right.
Sosuishi-Ryu, like in Fukuoka. That's a judojo. That's
Right.
a judojo,
Right.
and has the Sosuishi-Ryu is kind of like their kata for the school.
Right.
So you know how like judo has a bunch of kata that they
Right.
practice at a higher level,
Right.
like that they just have an additional set of kata,
Right.
and this is the same for kendo. So they would have kendo as a primary study there,
Right.
and then the leaders of that were the martial artists, the bushi of the area,
Right.
samurai,
Right.
what were an old school. So they would be
Right.
supporting school. It's really unusual.
So, you know, it's interesting you say that because there's a lot coming out about the martial arts in Okinawa now, where a lot of the stuff that we were told, you know, like when I was a kid, first doing karate about how farmers created and stuff, this has all turned out to be utter nonsense. The Okinawans had their own warrior class, and that's who developed karate. We know this for a fact. These guys were members of the Ryukyu kingdom. They were either bodyguards or warriors for the king, and they were the ones that developed these martial arts. Now there's also some stuff coming out where there's a pretty good chance that there was cross training with the Satsuma samurai. Because
Really?
obviously, once the Satsuma were there, it wasn't an adversarial relationship. It was okay, they're here. The Satsuma didn't want to affect Okinawa's trade with China because they wanted the Chinese goods too. So when the Chinese delegation would come, the Satsuma would kind of lie low. So now it looks like they think there's a pretty good chance that we know Jigen-Ryu was 100% taught on Okinawa because there's still pockets of it there. And they're also saying now, and this is an Okinawan doing this research by the name of Motobu Naoki, and he's doing tremendous stuff. And he says that he believes there were certain jujitsu schools that were also influenced on the empty hand of karate, right?
Really?
Yeah. And so I sent him some stuff on Sosuishi-Ryu. I sent him some stuff. He told me he's going to look into it, see if he can find a connection with that. Because Sakaguchi-Ryu is one of the ones he mentions. And we know that's another one that's in that same kind of time frame of Sosuishi-Ryu. So yeah. And you know, so it's interesting. We now know that like the founder of Isshin-Ryu studied with Kion Chotoku. And Kion Chotoku taught in 3 locations. The people he taught at his house, he trained differently from the people he taught at the 2 public locations. So it's almost like similar to what you're saying here. Like they had the kendo, which helped them to bring a lot of people in and keep the doors open, right? Keep this thing going. And then it's almost like they could identify the guys who were serious, they thought would be the serious martial artists, and maybe they brought them into the study of the Ko-Ryu, the ancient school. And it's interesting that this is all coming out now in Okinawa. And, you know, of course, there's guys that still think farmers created it, right? But like I've been saying for years, farmers are working fields all day long. When do they have time to develop a martial art? First off, why would they even care about developing a martial art? You know, so it turns out it's not true. There's a lot of good research going on. So it's fascinating to see what's coming out. I'm waiting to see what else comes out, you know, in terms of, you know, this link between, you know, the Japanese martial arts, which if you think about it, it makes common sense. The Satsuma were there for hundreds of years. You're going to tell me they didn't form relationships? You're going to tell me, you know, and now it's come out that the Chinese, when they studied with the Chinese, that was after they had trained some with the Satsuma and with the Japanese. So these Chinese merchants were coming in and they were staying in Okinawa. And what they would do is they would charge by the lesson.
Oh.
So you'd go in and say, okay, I want to learn 5 kata, and they'll charge you a set price to learn those 5 kata. Well, I could only afford 1 kata. Okay, well, I'll teach you this 1 kata for this price. So that's why some of these early Okinawan masters might have only learned 1 kata. Some might have learned 5 kata. They had more money, right? So that's the other thing. These early Okinawan masters of karate all had money. These guys were not poor guys, you know. And so it's just fascinating how all this new historical stuff is coming out. And there's a couple of guys. Andreas Quast is another guy doing phenomenal research about
Yeah.
Okawa. I had him on the podcast. I mean, it was great. So yeah, and it's just crazy, you know, how this different stuff is coming out. And I don't know if you know, are you aware that Sosuishi-Ryu had swimming in armor?
No, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
So Shitama Sensei told me, he said to me, he goes, he says, Mike, there was many more things in Sosuishi-Ryu, but some things we don't no longer do because there's no reason for. And that was one of the ones he said to me. He said, swimming. And I looked at him and I said, swimming. And he said, yeah. And I said, in Yuri, you know, in Yoroi, in the armor? And he goes, yes. And I thought for a second, I said, well, yeah, if you're storming a castle and you're in armor, you fall in a moat or you fall in some type of body of water, you better know how to keep yourself up or you're going to drown with all that extra weight on you. So it's funny that you're studying this Japanese swim school, right? And again, going back to Sosuishi-Ryu, at one point, there was swimming in armor techniques.
That's yeah, you're gonna find that schools like this have stuff that are lost. That just disappeared for one reason or another, or they developed in a way that was popular. That the stuff that sold is what they teach.
So it's my understanding that Yagyu Nobuhara, the late one, the one who passed away, that they had a scroll of techniques. And his whole life, he was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And he couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I always use that as a story when I tell people, because I say, if this guy couldn't figure it out,
yeah,
it would be like Sugino Sensei not being able to figure it out in Katori, right? Because these guys are at a level that's just unbelievable, right? Their knowledge, the depth of knowledge, trained since they're young children, right? In these arts, right? And that's why when I laugh, when I see someone has found a scroll and then all of a sudden they're recreating kata, and you look at the kata and you're like, yeah, something doesn't quite look right with those techniques.
Yeah, you know, Yagyu Seigo-Ryu, or their EI.
Okay.
That is from Seigo-Ryu.
Okay.
Nobuhara's father recreated that school. He found the scroll and recreated the techniques.
Okay. So that's specifically the EI.
Yeah, specifically the EI.
Now, did you do any of the EI?
I did very little of it when I first came here.
So you're talking, I just want to make sure we're talking the same EI. So where the noto is, the tip of the sword comes over and goes directly in, right? Okay, right. Okay, you know, okay, yeah. Just make
that's the that's Yagyu Seigo-Ryu, and that it's actually just Seigo-Ryu.
Okay.
The person who did it was actually a student of Yagyu Shinkage-Ryu that wanted to create their own school for EI.
Okay. So how old is that?
That wasn't even in this area. That was out towards Nara, I think it was.
Okay.
Someone who knows will immediately correct me on that, but it's out away from me to the east.
Okay.
And that is probably around 300 years old or 200.
So it's still pretty old. Yeah, it's been
around. It's been lost, and it was recreated by his father, Yagyu Gencho. There's two. There's Genshu and Gencho. I think it's Yagyu Gencho.
Okay.
And Gencho recreated the school, and his father Genshu was the teacher of Kato Sensei from the Shunpukan. So they're actually the guy who created the Yagyu Seigo-Ryu was a rival student or a brother student to the teacher who founded the Shunpukan.
Well, I think looking at EI, because the forms are so short, I would think if you're going to be able to figure something out, it's much easier to figure out an EI form than to figure out a two-man Kenjutsu form.
That's the thing. If you look at EI, you kind of wonder what happened there, because everything in Japan is doubled, right? They do sotai kata, being two people,
right?
And I kind of developed around this thing with me doing meditation. It's like Kyudo
Right,
almost, which
right,
is bizarre.
right,
But even in Kyudo, you have a target, right?
right, right.
So there's a theory that's floating around now that the instructor was sitting there in front of you, and he'd have a sword or he'd have a stick,
Okay.
and you would slice at the stick, and he would move and block it, and that would be him measuring it actively with you,
Right.
and that faded out. So I don't know if this is true or not, but it's been poked around that it was actually two-man kata, and the instructor would teach actively with you, sitting with you, and correcting you as you went, and stopping you with a short sword or
Well,
whatever.
so my EI background is I'm Shodan under Takeshi Mitsuzuka from Musa Shinrin.
Huh.
And yeah, so that's a long time ago. Okay. Obviously I'm doing the Sosuishi-Ryu Koshino Mawari for a long, long time. Yagi Shinkage-Ryu. I did a little bit of Shindo Muso-Ryu, with Takeshi Mitsuzuka. And obviously I've been doing Katori Shinto-Ryu now for over 15 years. So I know the these Sawari and the standing EI from Katori Shinto-Ryu. The thing I'll tell you is the Sosuishi-Ryu Koshino Mawari I find to be amongst the most combative styles of EI that I've seen. When you're talking about you're drawing the sword, cutting, then you're kicking the guy, and then you're following up with a stab to finish him off. And then the other thing, I had someone translate the kanji that Mama Shitama wrote for me one time. And he translated it, and the way he translated it, he said to me that the Koshino Mawari and the Kumiuchi,
No, it's the same.
they're interrelated, almost like the yin yang symbol. So when he said that to me, it something like kind of clicked. And then I said to myself, okay, so if I was going to cut a guy with the sword, and he came up and stopped my hand, like we do in the Jiu-Jitsu kata when the guy tries to cut us with the sword. Like, how would I counter that? And I began to realize that some of the techniques in the Koshino Mawari, I think, are actually countering some of the jujitsu that we do.
Yeah.
And started playing around with that. And it just opened up a little bit of a different door. I said the Sosuishi-Ryu EI Jitsu is serious stuff. It's difficult. The other thing that's weird with the EI is it's in Seiza. A lot of it's in Seiza.
Yeah.
Which, like in Katori, we're in more of an EI gauche position.
That's right.
But and sometimes because I have a bad knee now, so because of that, I sometimes practice the Sosuishi-Ryu in the EI gauche position too. And I always question, like, why in Seiza? And then I actually I forget who I brought this up to. I said, well, is it possible that the Koshino Mawari and Sosuishi-Ryu was originally done with a short sword?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
like I'm in a castle. Me and you are two samurai facing each other. We can't carry the long swords, so we're carrying short swords, right?
Yeah.
And and that's what really. And when you do them with the short sword, it gets quite interesting in terms of the mai and in terms of the techniques. That art is so powerful, and it's just a shame that it's dying out. It really is.
It's no one's interested in it. They want to do judo.
Some of the stuff I did for Isshinryu, I might have been able to do and get Sosuishi-Ryu on the map and get more people interested in doing it.
Well, that's what the father was doing.
Right.
That's what Shinkage was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what he did with Fleming, and he was going. His Aoyagi, his teacher,
right,
the one who founded the Sekiryukan, was actually over in Korea during the occupation era, teaching judo.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was teaching there with a bunch of famous judoka. So it's always been open to spreading. And he would call judo jujitsu. He wouldn't call it judo.
Right.
Because to him, it was an extension of Sosuishi-Ryu.
So his daughter, Shitama Sensei's mother, Shuzo's wife, right? I was sitting with her and she was giving me a quiz on the directions. The code of conduct for Sosuishi-Ryu.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So she wanted to know my answers. So Teriko was there, Monzo's sister who spoke English, and she was translating. And we finished. I said to her, I said, I just need to be clear. 2 of them I cannot follow. And she was, oh. And I said, I'm a police officer. I cannot walk away from someone doing a violent act. I'm going to that violent act. I have to stop that violent act. And she went, chotomate, chotomate. She goes, no, no, no. Police and military exempt. You're exempt from those directions because, yes, your society's protectors. You have to go do that. But she also told me something interesting, which you talk about Aogi. She said to me, when I met her, she was in her 70s. She says, Michael, I wish I was younger. I would teach you how to fight with the short sword. My father taught me how to fight with the short sword. And again, like, I just like, I wish she was younger, right? Because again, something else maybe that was lost that I could have learned, and maybe, you know, we held on to it, right? But now gone. But it's interesting when you hear someone like her, who's the daughter of the, you know, the wife and the son, right? 3 headmasters in a row. And she says, oh, my father trained me to fight with a short sword. Oh, okay. Right. So obviously she was no shrinking violet either. Right.
Yeah, that's
And
that.
so I don't know if you're aware of what happened with Fleming in the States and why Fleming kind of got turned off to everything.
No, I'm not. I know that something happened in Chicago with Gruzunski, and Gruzunski went on his way, and
Yeah.
then what happened with what's his name? Not Fleming's guy in Oregon. What's his name? I can't remember his name.
Bob Dewar?
Tour, yeah, Tour.
Right.
Yeah, I know that something happened, and they kind of it broke up across the United States.
So what, you know, I don't know if you're aware of how Fleming was allowed to study Sosuishi-Ryu.
Was it by mail?
No, 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 no. He lived in Japan.
Okay.
He was in the
I
Air
know
Force.
during the war, right? After the war.
Well, I think it was after the war, and he married a Japanese woman.
Right.
No Americans, no foreigners were allowed to train in Sosuishi-Ryu. None. Right.
Really?
So she was friends with the Shitamas, and he asked if he would be allowed to train, and he was told no. And
Really?
his wife was a direct descendant of Hideyoshi.
Okay, well, that was an open judo dojo at the time, though. They were teaching judo, right?
Right, but he wanted to do the jiu-jitsu.
So,
He was a military
okay.
guy, right?
Okay.
So the wife went to the Shitamas and asked, and because of her lineage coming from you know, a descendant of Hideyoshi, one of the shoguns, the Shitamas agreed to train him. So that's where he studied. And then he came back to the States and he trained a bunch of different guys. Ron Duncan in New York, who became a ninja guy.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, Di Pasquale, Michael Di Pasquale Sr., a few other guys, right? And Ron Duncan actually, after I came out with my series on the kata, Ron Duncan actually called me to say to me, he goes, you know, I saw your videos and I gotta say, I'm so happy that there's someone still practicing the real jujitsu. He goes, you know, I did it for a while with Fleming, but you know, things happen. And I said, yeah, I understand, right? So they just all kind of fell apart. And one of the things that happened with Fleming, which a lot of people don't know about, is Jackie Stern, who's a relative of Howard Stern, who's been arrested for stolen valor, claimed to be a Medal of Honor recipient, never was. What he did was he incorporated Sosuishi-Ryu and incorporated the symbol, unbeknownst to Fleming. Fleming took them to court, fought it, and Fleming lost. And yeah, so that really soured him on a lot of things, Fleming. I did speak to at a certain time, I spoke to Fleming's son. And Fleming's son, you know, had told me like in terms of Dennis Fink, he said, I never saw Dennis Fink practice the jujitsu with my father. I only saw him do some of the sword kata, you know. And now everybody that had trained with Fleming or had saw Fleming do something said the guy's technique was top notch. So, you know, I know you put up a lot of stuff because I watch your stuff when you go to the Taikais and different events, you know, which I think is great, you know. And, you know, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you too. I mean, you're there a long time now. And, you know, my recent podcast I did on Ko-Ryu, I brought up the fact that I feel there's been a decline in the practice of many of the Ko-Ryu, that there's a lack of intensity in the practice, that it's a little too much choreography and not enough martial, you know. I didn't want to see what your thoughts were on that.
It's both. Both. There's some people in some schools that have retained what they called a jisen.
Right.
You familiar with this word? It means
No.
like violence or
Okay.
defensive or attacking and aggression.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
so jisen kobudo is when that's what they used to do with Geki Ken, the founder of the founding school of kendo.
Right.
They would get together and try to beat the hell out of each other with a shinai.
Right.
It's that. So like you go to the Shunfukan and they put on armor and then they whip out the spears and they actively try to take each other down with the spears. And
Right.
unbeknownst to a lot of people, they do that with all the weapons they have there.
Okay.
So, for example, they have something like a kabuto wari,
Okay.
you know, the foot splitter that has like
Right.
the shaped like a C kind of.
Right.
But they'll have a guy with a sword try to cut their head off, and they'll stop that with
Okay.
the kabuto wari. And they'll be in armor and gloved up and stuff. So I can't say no, that doesn't happen anymore because I see they actually do have people who have aggression in their school and who actually actively fight along with kata practice.
Well, I've also seen that when I trained in Jodo with Matsumoto Shigehiro in the Yogi dojo. I mean, we were trying to kill each other. I mean, that was the most intense dojo I ever trained in. I mean, you were expected to try to cut the guy with the bokken, and he was on his own, you know. And even in the Sugino dojo, when you're a beginner, obviously Sugino is very much about slowly, correctly. But once you start to develop some ability, okay, now the heat gets turned up. Like I've gone there and paired off with some of the senior teachers where they're coming after me. I mean, there's no, okay, Mike, time to get your big boy pants on because now it's on, right? But then some schools I've seen where I see a lot of demos where they do it, I've seen a decline where the attacks don't look real. It doesn't look like there's any intent in the attack, you know? And that to me eventually weakens the school to the point where, you know, is it martial arts anymore? Or now we just doing a martial dance? You know?
Yeah, that's probably, well, I can't say that the dance. Have you seen Bonote? Have you seen that?
The bow dances?
Well, Bonote is bow in hand.
Okay.
It's a kind of a shrine dance.
Okay.
That's presented in Aichi in
Okay.
Toyota City, which is actually the home of the Matsudaira, who's Tokugawa was his name when he was ruling the country. So his
Okay.
family is there. And this area has a bunch of old horse samurai who are low-level samurai.
Okay.
And they train, believe it or not, the farmers to do this dance. And why they were doing this is because they didn't have a whole lot of people out there because it was the countryside. So they
Right.
were training to be ready to pick up arms if they had to, if they were attacked.
Right.
Because it was Tokugawa's home territory. That would be the place that would
Well,
attack.
it's the same stuff that went on in Europe.
Oh, of course, yes.
The king calls the farmers and says, grab your farming tools. We're going to go fight. Right.
Right.
And they respond. So it's the same. That's why it's always interesting to me. Human nature is the same everywhere. You see the same things repeat, whether it's in the West, whether it's in the East, whether it's in Africa, where these same ideas kind of come out of these combat traditions, right?
Right. And this is a dance. It's a shrine dance.
Okay.
I mean, they're actually doing dancey stuff, but the aggression that they show in it is intense. So the kids, they go out and they're like, yeah,
Right.
oh, they're embarrassed, right?
Right.
But then the adults come out and they'll take a spear, right? And they'll have a guy with a hat, like a farmer's hat, defending himself. The sign of a good spearman is that he doesn't cut the person that he's stabbing, but goes through the material of his uwagi.
Okay.
It's like himbe, right? He's wearing an overcoat.
Right.
So he's got holes all through his shirt where the spear goes right through and pierces his shirt, but doesn't cut his skin. And that's showing that the spearman's good, right?
Right.
And it's crazy aggressive. These guys are violent.
Right.
And I was sitting watching this going, these guys are insane. This is nuts. But when you talk to them, they're like, yes, we've taught this from a shrine dance perspective, but the idea is to try to kill each other.
Right.
And that was dispelling all the evil between us as farmers or whatever.
So it's funny because Andreas Quast just wrote a book on Bo Odori, which is bow dances in all the different prefectures and villages in Okinawa.
Okay.
And so, and what he said, and so what he does in the book, he has a QR code. So he explains it, and then you click on the QR code, it goes to a video. So you can see a video of what he's just talking about.
Oh.
Very clever, right? So now I was talking to him about it. He was saying how the way a lot of this originally started was the village kept these techniques, right? Right? But other guys would come and they'd watch and they'd steal the techniques and they'd go back to their village and work. So when you see some of these bow dances, the way you're describing this, you see some of these guys, they're swinging these bows. I mean, they are, and a lot of times they're not using the smooth bow that we use now in martial arts. They're using like a tree branch or something like that from nature that they're fighting with. And yeah, and again, it's just fascinating that all these different cultures, because of the nature of human nature and warfare, how there's so many similar threads that go through all these different arts. So let me ask you a question. So when you first got to Japan, what were some of the obstacles you faced?
As a foreigner?
As a foreigner, yeah.
Number one is language.
Okay.
Now, if you have a problem speaking Japanese, you're immediately isolating yourself.
So now, do you speak fluent?
I speak very well. I'm not going to say fluent. Yeah, I speak very well.
Your wife is Japanese, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
My children both went to school here, all three of them.
Okay.
I have a son, 29 years old. He's older than that now. He lives in Tokyo and he's a banker.
Okay.
And people realize that he's foreign, but they really don't even think of him that way.
Right.
Same with my kids. They think they're foreign, but they don't see them that way because the language unifies them here.
Right.
So if you speak Japanese and you live in Japan, you're not going to get treated the same as someone who does not speak Japanese.
Okay.
Living here. Like in the United States, I'm used to hearing an accent.
Right.
And it's not a problem for me. Sometimes it's difficult to listen to, but
right.
Here, it's not the same. If you have an accent, they think you don't understand the thing that you're saying. And sometimes it's true. I realize that that's true. I don't really understand what they're saying, but it isolates you. You become isolated and you feel like they're being racist against you, which does happen, but it's an ignorant racism. I'm going to put it that way.
So have you also found, because I've found this now, again, I haven't lived there. I've only visited there, which is a whole different animal. But I have found that they realize I don't speak Japanese and they know I'm only visiting. But like the one last time I was in Okinawa, the woman thought I spoke fluent Japanese because she said my pronunciation was so good.
Oh.
So I do make the attempt to pronounce things correctly. And I've found that in doing that, that's appreciated.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's
because again, I'm not living there. I'm only visiting. I'm going back. But when I'm there, I'm making the attempt. But have you found that in trying to learn the language as best you can, do you find that there's also a certain group of people that appreciate that and respect you, that you're really trying to learn their language and understand what's going on?
And the people who are come off at you as racist will probably help you.
Right.
In language and trying to learn things. They're not really racist. They just don't know who you are and they feel like foreign. They feel because they're very group oriented.
Right.
So when you go to school in Japan, I blame the military for this, but when you go to school in Japan, your first years are the beginners, right? Your second years are the advanced students leading you. And then the third years are the wanting control of the two underneath them. And that's how it is throughout your school life, from the beginning until the end. So you're going to have people who are senpai, who are leading you, and then you have people underneath them, kohai.
Right.
And that's Japan's culture in a nutshell. You have people who are older and senior leading the younger, which is just flat out. If you don't understand that and you have a problem with language, they're going to isolate you.
Right.
Because it's not part of the culture. However, if you speak Japanese and you just kind of hang out in the back and say yes and no and answer questions, they're going to immediately elevate you culturally. You're going to become part of the
culture. Okay.
Very unusual. Like my friend Chris, he's a radio DJ. His Japanese is 100% fluent.
Okay.
He speaks regularly on the radio. He has a radio voice, and he can do it in English too. And I've never seen anybody integrate into the culture more than him. They
Okay.
just, oh yeah, he's Japanese.
So can I tell you? So you know who Phil Relnick is?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
from Washington.
Yeah. So when I tested for Shodan, in Jodo back in '92, I think, or
Yeah,
'94. I can't.
I trained Phil at the dojo in Washington. I know him very well. I stayed the
So,
night this way.
yeah. So I take my test, and I don't know if I maybe I did know I passed. I don't remember, but I see him walking towards me across the floor. Now, obviously, if you're a martial arts lunatic like I am, I've read all the Draeger books. So I've seen photos of Relnick. I recognize him right away as he's walking towards me. And I said to myself, oh, that's Relnick Sensei. So he comes over and I said, oh, Relnick Sensei. I said, he goes, oh, have we met? I said, no. I said, but I recognize you from Don Drager's books. And he says, oh, I said, I'm Mike Calandra. He shakes my hand. He goes, oh, he says, I like to come and score the foreigners and see if they're being treated the same as the Japanese when they're testing, which I thought was interesting. And he said to me, you didn't make any mistakes. And I immediately said to him, I'm sure my teacher would strongly disagree with that statement. Right. And he laughed. Right. So we talked for a while. And I said to him, I said, you've lived here a really long time. And at the time, I think it was 30 years or something like that.
He was in Japan at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, God, that was before the '90s. That's a long time
So
ago.
it was like 1992. So it's
Okay,
early
very
90s. Yeah.
Okay.
So listen, so now he goes, I said to him, he goes, but I'm moving back. I said, oh. And I said, oh, why are you doing that? And his response always struck me, said, I live here, but I'll never be a part of here. Like I'll never be fully accepted here. And I get that the type of society that Japan is, I think if you're going to live there as a foreigner, I think in the back of your head, you kind of have to accept the fact that you're not going to be 100% accepted by everyone there. And I think he owned a business there. I think he owned a printing business or something like that.
Yeah. He was in the army. I think it was a communications in the army. He married in Nobuko, I think her name is.
Have you experienced when you're initially in a Japanese dojo, anybody testing you, trying you, putting pressure on you? 100%, right? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now has it been in every dojo or some dojo different?
Some dojo are different.
Okay.
Like I found that at bigger dojo. Like I'm not gonna say the name, but there was a guy at a big dojo in Nagoya that would test the patience of everyone. He eventually left.
Okay.
But Kato Sensei was very nice. He was a very understanding man, and people had relationships with him, right? So when you go to the dojo, it was your relationship with him.
Right.
And a lot of people didn't like this guy, but he had a good relationship with Kato Sensei. So they respected and tolerated him. And he made everybody mad. And he was, in fact, a foreigner. He was not native Japanese. And by foreign, I mean he was Asian. He was a different type of Asian. His mother or father was Japanese. And it's like this. And he was a doctor. And people hated him. He came off as arrogant. He came off as know-it-all. He was constantly corrected by his seniors.
Okay.
And if you were around him, you hated him, right? And he actually, it's all self-conscious. It's all a part of his psyche, and it probably had something to do with his mental problems with him.
Right.
Feeling inferior, right?
Right.
You ignored him.
Yeah. Right.
Just ignored him.
So funny, when the first set of kata I did in the Yogi Jodo dojo, I was training with a senior guy, and again, it's my first time. I don't know anybody. I knew I had met Matsumura, but I didn't know anybody else. And the guy stabs me in the sternum with a bokken. Like I mean hard. And that woke me up real quick. And I was like, I spent the rest of the kata trying to kill him. And I'm not bullshitting you. Like I went after this guy. And at the end, when we bowed out, he comes up to me, he points to his chest. He goes, okay. I said, what? What are you talking about? He says, this okay? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, there's no way I give him satisfaction, right? But that was great because I said to myself, okay, now every single person I pair off with here, Okay,
No,
it's gonna be on. I'd like to hopefully do something if I can more to help preserve the Sosuishi-Ryu. I just don't want it to go, you know?
yeah, it looks like to me. I've been watching,
Right.
and um, the Judojo, the Sekidukan. When I was there for the 350th anniversary for Sosuishi-Ryu, they had maybe 2 students.
Right.
I think 3, and yeah, it was 3, and then they pulled Tim Lynch. You remember him?
Yeah.
To Embu with them because he didn't have a group. I went down there with the Tokyo group,
Right.
and then there was another group that was actually related to them. There's actually several groups of Sosuishi-Ryu in Fukuoka, or in Fukuoka at the time, and they just didn't have the relationship with
Right.
Ryukan that they did. But there was only like 1 or 2 students
Right.
that were trained at the Sekiryukan actively.
Right.
You know, I don't. The son looks like he's got some French students,
Right.
and that's about it. I don't know.
This is why this is my final offer. Like, this is the last time I'm going back. And, you know, if I can accomplish something, great. And if I don't, it just means nothing's changed. Right. So and there's another dojo that I have to visit there. So it's not like I'm going there just for that.
Yeah. Well,
So,
in Fukuoka?
In Fukuoka, yeah, there's Mariyoshi Kobudo dojo there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna go. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go visit them. So are you training in anything particular right now, or you've taken a break?
No, I actively train all the
Okay.
time,
Okay.
continually. For example, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
Okay.
So I'm very big with there's a huge Portuguese group, or Portuguese, they're Brazilian.
Okay.
They speak, but there's a huge Brazilian population in Japan. And I'm associated with them just because I'm foreign.
Right.
The ones that I like to associate with are the martial arts nerds. So we all
Right.
hang out. So
Right.
I'm at a local dojo here. So I train at the dojo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, 6 times a week, 7 times sometimes.
Okay.
And I go to Tendo-ryu every week, which is the Naginata.
Right.
Do Shingyoto-ryu every week. I do Koike-ryu. Bishuchi. I train in everything on my own, and I have groups that I belong to.
Okay. Very good. Cool.
1 to 3 Kendo groups, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 50. Hold on. What year is it? 53.
Oh, 53. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Okay.
61 in a couple of months.
Yeah, you made it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You know,
No, broke.
You know, and it's interesting. I have no injuries from martial arts. My knee is something I was born with, you know. I mean, me and my wife love it out here in Arizona. I mean, oh my God, we just love it out here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're prolificating. You're being very, very
yeah,
you're growing.
We love it out here. I got people coming in tomorrow from Colorado, and they trained with me in St. Louis years ago, and they reconnected with me 6 months ago, and they called last week and said we're going to be in Phoenix. So they're coming down to train, and they're going to come do some private training with me on Monday. So yeah, I'm busy as hell when it comes to martial arts stuff. And you know, like you, I have this martial arts sickness where I'd love to do even more different martial arts, but you can only do so much, you know?
And I'm around, I'm lucky because I live in Japan. There's
Right.
people that
Right.
train.
Right.
You want to your Juhapan, right? Your Juhapan.
Right.
The 18 skills of the warrior,
Right.
What it is.
Right.
So you like something for everything.
Right. Yeah.
That's what you want to do. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do everything I can.
Yeah, like I interviewed Mark Wiley a few weeks ago, and he does a screamer, like I said, Kung Fu. And you know, I went to an event here last year in Phoenix where I did some eskrima. They had I taught 3 things. I taught some Katori, I taught Chen style, and I taught feeding crane. And then but these eskrima guys were coming, and I loved eskrima since I did it with O'Connor a little bit, right? And I just think it's fun as hell. So these guys came in and we lucked out. It was a promotion weekend, so they showed up with 8 instructors. So I got to pair off with an instructor. So they start showing these techniques, and I'm doing it, and all of a sudden, we're going fast. And the guy stops and he looks at me and goes, "Okay, how long are you doing a screamer?" I said, "I'm not lying to you. I have about 3 hours of instruction in a screamer. That's it." And the guy's like, "All right," but he's giving me the eye. And he's Filipino.
Yeah.
He's giving me the eye, like, "Yeah, okay, right." So now we start going, and he starts doing different combinations, and I'm just reacting, and we're going. And then like after 5 minutes, he goes, "Okay, cut the bullshit. Who are you?" Right. I said,
Right.
well, I taught some seminars here and I'm a very senior martial artist, but I'm not kidding you. I got 3 hours of a screamer. He goes, yeah, but you're picking up real quick. Okay, we're going to do some stuff. And again, I got very excited and I was like, man, I'd love to do this screamer stuff. And I thought about maybe even if I could go once a month, and I still may do it, no interest in rank, just to go and have fun for a couple of hours once a month and train and work out. And then they do have here a historical swordsmanship society, European.
Yeah, HEMA, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna check it out. I haven't got a chance to yet, but I'm going to go and check it out and see what they're doing. Because again, they could be more cosplay or they could be more serious guys.
You want this? Yeah.
If they're cosplay, nice meeting you, take care. If they're more serious, then I'd say, oh, maybe I'll come and do some classes and just experience that, So yeah, and busy with the YouTube channel, and life's good. But I'm glad you came on. I think people will find this one interesting. I know I did. Um, and anything else that comes up, you need anything from me, let me know. I already know if I need something from you, you're always there, you're always responding and helping me out with things. The thing to ward off bad luck hangs proudly in my dojo. Yep, it's been up there since you gave it to me. Yeah, and it's up there, and life is good. And how far are you from Fukuoka?
Fukuoka is around by the train, not very far.
Okay.
But it would take me to drive down there probably about a day to drive down there.
Okay, so you're talking about the by Shinkansen, you're not far.
Yeah. If I take the Shinki, I'll just be down there in no time at all.
Now, how far is the station from where you are?
Station, I can walk to the station.
No, so maybe if I can, maybe I'll fit a day in.
Yeah, come on down.
Maybe I'll come and visit you, and we'll spend a day together, and then I'll head up to Sugino Sensei.
Yeah, come play at the dojo. I do shuriken too. I have a.
Oh, cool! That'd be cool as hell. Oh yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you with this final story. I go in, so I do the 3-hour thing with McCarthy. 6 months I'm training, and I say to McCarthy, "Hey, I want to go train with Sugino Sensei." He goes, "Okay." He makes a phone call, and we're invited to go. And he has a senior student who trained with his father too, woman, and she speaks English. So back and forth on Facebook. I show up with 9 guys, and we walk in the dojo. And as we walk in the dojo, you can't really see the dojo because you step up, and then the dojo's around this way. So we walk in. I'm taking my shoes off, and I hear, "Whop, whop, whop." And I step up, I bow in, and I stand up, and I turn around. And there's one of the sensei with his hair up, white hair, and he's throwing shuriken into the mat like you have. Whop. And I turn to my guys and I go, this is my kind of dojo, right?
Yeah, fun stuff, right?
Yeah. And, I haven't done the shuriken with Sugino yet, but, I've seen it done there and it's fantastic. And, yeah.
Like, I got them right here.
Yeah.
These are the type of shuriken, the bowl shuriken that you use.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah.
I love
I know. I see sometimes there's one guy selling them.
Yeah, there's a couple guys selling. I can make them and sell them. I make all my shuriken.
Okay.
So, yeah, and there's a really good maker here in Kuana I'm trying to hook up with. They have a 210-year-old foundry.
Okay.
Trying to make shuriken for me.
All
but
right.
he's always busy making old style scissors for some reason. That's your clippers.
Because that's what people want to buy. That's how he's making his money.
I'd like to make shuriken with him because he makes everything by hand, and it's a very old foundry.
Okay.
I live in an unusual town. I live in the town that Honda Tadakatsu kind of created.
Okay.
Honda Tadakatsu was a warrior here that was never defeated. He was a Buddhist monk. He's one of the major samurai from Sekigahara. And he was given this town to settle because this place used to be a very active religious uprising place with a group known as the Iko Iki, which was a religious group that had a large army that was actually threatening to take over. Well, not threatening, but we're going to take over Japan. And when everything settled down, he came and moved here. So where I live is very historical.
Okay.
And there's an old castle on one side, and there's a castle site on another. And this is where Muramasa, the sword maker, he had cursed swords. So Tokugawa cut himself.
Right.
That lived here.
Okay.
Yeah. kind of like that. It's an interesting place.
You know.
Do you know Skip Armstrong, Hunter Armstrong?
I do know who he is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's there. I think he's in Arizona, isn't he? He's up in. He has
I'm not sure.
yeah, he has a dojo out there.
Okay,
And
I'll look it up.
yeah, definitely. He was with the Shunfukan, with the Owari-Ryu and Shinkage-Ryu.
Okay.
And you definitely do an interview with him. He's
Okay.
extremely knowledgeable. He was under Drager direct.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I know him from because he's a member of the Hoplology. He was one of the guys doing the Hoplology stuff.
He is the Hoplology. He owns that.
Yeah.
That's him.
So tell me his name again. It's
Hunter Armstrong.
It is Hunter Armstrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Hunter Armstrong. All right.
His
Yeah,
name
I'll
is
look him up. Yeah, I'll look him up. And if he's not that far, I'll go visit.
Yeah, you should definitely go see him. He's got the I can't remember what he calls it. It's the Hoplology compound though. And
Okay.
he does training out there. He's a great guy.
Okay.
He's a really good guy.
All right.
You should
I'll definitely look into that. It's interesting. Every time I interview someone, I get connected to someone else to interview. So I'm not kidding you. I probably have another 10 interviews in the pipeline. Yeah. And some are authors, and some aren't, you know. But yeah, I mean, but it's been going, and people seem to like the interviews, which is good. And what happens is like it opens up a different audience. Like, so when I have the Eskrima guy on, now I'm getting guys. I have another guy on. Okay, now people that follow him are now all joining my channel, right? So it's good. And you know, so yeah, so I'm having fun with it, and I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I think people will find this one interesting, and we'll do it again in the future.
Yeah, look me up. I'm got time. Come see me.
We'll do it again. I'm going to try to. All right, and keep me in mind for a set of those shuriken.
Okay.
All right.
I got it right here.
All right. Good. All right. So thanks again, and you know, I'll see you down the road.
All right.